Not all silence is peace. Not every smile is lightness. Sometimes what looks like strength is defense. What seems like maturity is exhaustion in disguise. Some learned too early that feeling was dangerous, that tears exposed them, that speaking of pain pushed people away. So pretending became instinct, an automatic reflex, like breathing in an airless room where nothing real is welcome. Life teaches us young that being accepted matters more than being whole, that it's better to seem okay than to be fragile. And so adults emerge who were never allowed to be children, people with an elegant sadness in their eyes, who say I'm fine with the rehearsed speed of those who've practiced too much. But inside, something is fading, something is tired. The maturity others applaud may not be strength, it might be unnamed grief, a pain forced to wear responsibility's costume. You're not being mature, you're being trained to silence your pain, and the cost isn't visible. It's felt in the body, in sleepless nights, in a soul with no room left to breathe. Pretending isn't lying, it's survival. But there comes a time when surviving isn't enough, because the soul doesn't want acceptance. It wants to be heard. And even if the world doesn't notice, it keeps whispering, it's not okay, and it's okay to admit that. Some truths never die, they just hide. Truths that unfit for the world you were demanded to fit into, learn to live in shadows, but they're still there, waiting for an opening, waiting for the day you stop pretending, stop smiling outside while bleeding inside. Jung called this the shadow, all you refuse to accept in yourself, all you silence, deny, sweep under consciousness' rug. But what isn't seen doesn't vanish, it grows, and it grows in the dark, muting sadness, anger, frustration may make you more functional, more socially palatable, but that's not healing, that's anesthesia. The soul doesn't fall ill in public, it rots in silence, emptying slowly, until one day you feel nothing, no pain, no joy, just a void, an exhaustion with no explanation, a disconnection no rest can fix. So you collect escapes, distractions, justifications, but none touch the root, because the root is in what you stopped listening to. The shadow isn't your enemy, it just wants space, to exist without disguise, because the soul only heals when it stops hiding, and that begins when you let it be seen, even if trembling, even if still lost. There's a weariness that doesn't come from the body, but from the soul carrying roles all day, a fatigue born not from what you do but from what you hide to keep functioning. And hiding hurts, hiding drains, hiding tires more than facing the truth. Masks demand energy, constant vigilance. You learn to smile when you don't mean it, to say I'm okay when you're shattered, to seem whole while screaming inside, until this habit becomes addiction, and the addiction becomes identity. You forget how to live without pretense. Collapse doesn't happen suddenly. It starts with small lies told with good intentions, with the 100th I'm fine, with swallowed tears to avoid concern. But the body hears everything, and the body doesn't forget. It records every forced silence, every unspoken ache, every truth pushed down. When the soul finds no ears, the body takes over. It starts signaling, with palpitations, insomnia, exhaustion, not because you're weak, but because you've faked strength too long. Living a lie isn't lightness. It's weight piled up in silence. What you call weakness may not be an end. It might be a beginning, the start of a life where you no longer need to seem okay, to finally be okay. Not all kindness is light. Sometimes it weighs like an anchor, because it's not born of choice, but necessity, the need to keep peace at all costs, to avoid conflict, to preserve bonds, even at the price of your truth. So being nice becomes armor, a serene mask over inner storms. The good person is a seductive archetype. It earns affection, admiration, belonging. But the price is high, the abandonment of self. You swallow words, discomfort, even your own identity, to avoid unsettling others, until you can't tell what you feel from what you fake. Nietzsche warned, we become what we pretend to be until we forget who we were. And the cruelest part? The peace you defend isn't real. It's fear in disguise, not harmony, avoidance. You don't have peace. You fear conflict. And that fear builds a prison where no one yells but everyone sickens quietly. Seeming good isn't the same as being true, and the soul knows. It feels the weight of every time you stayed silent to keep things light. But lightness that cost your integrity isn't lightness. It's exhaustion wearing makeup. Goodness shouldn't mean self-erasure, because kindness that ignores your pain curdles into resentment, and one day, that resentment finds a crack. And when it does, it screams louder than the fear that silenced it. There's a point where silence stops protecting and starts imprisoning, where muting yourself no longer saves, it suffocates. The soul endures much, but it has limits. And past that limit, the act falls apart. Life goes on, but something in you no longer follows. Repressed emotion doesn't disappear. It waits, hides in life's folds, disguised as sudden irritability, chronic insomnia, nameless apathy, until one day you realize you're more empty than present, more reactive than connected, more functional than alive. The body speaks when the soul is ignored. It whispers through tension, unexplained pains, unease with no medical cause, because unfelt pain becomes symptom, and the body pays the soul's debts. This isn't a common illness. It's an invisible withering, a soul starved of being heard, of being allowed to exist as it is, and it begins to dry, to fade, to no longer recognize itself in any mirror. The cruelest moment, when you stop missing what you lost, when silence becomes habit, and self-absence feels normal. The soul doesn't shout like the body, it vanishes slowly, and that vanishing is the clearest sign something must change, not outwardly, but within, where the silencing began. Somewhere along the way, you stopped being who you were, to become who they wanted, and that shift, so subtle, so necessary seeming, went unnoticed. It started with small concessions, a silence here, a forced yes there, a smile to avoid questions, until you no longer knew where the character ended, and you began. The trap of image is seductive. It offers acceptance, status, admiration, but the price is priceless, your truth, because the better you perform wellness, the further you drift from the pain you carry, the more you grow used to seeming whole while cracking inside. It's like staring into a fractured mirror. You see yourself, but the reflection is split, distorted. You know it's you, but also know something doesn't align. You became a character, but forgot the original script. And this pain isn't loud, it's constant, like background noise that never fades. The worst loneliness isn't being alone, it's being surrounded, yet feeling unseen, because the version you show is just a shell, a performance polished to please. And the longer you sustain it, the farther you drift from yourself. Being admired for a role you created doesn't ease the ache of not being loved for who you are. Sooner or later, this truth knocks, sometimes as angst, sometimes as collapse, but always as an invitation to remember who you were before you forgot yourself to fit in. Not all anger is chaos. Not all sadness is weakness. Sometimes it's the soul begging for space, the shadow demanding to be heard, the trapped tears, the inexplicable fatigue, the rage that erupts over nothing are messages, signs that something within you is tired of being ignored. Clarissa Pinkola Estes wrote, "The soul speaks softly, but when unheard, it shrieks through dreams, crises, and illness." And this truth cuts deep, because the shadow doesn't want to destroy you, it wants to free you from the false self, from the character you created to survive, from the mask that protected but also isolated you. The rage you carry might not be against the world, it might be against yourself, for staying silent so long, for betraying yourself so much, for bending to expectations until you broke. And this anger, when unheard, turns to resentment, to self-sabotage, to quiet violence. The shadow isn't a monster. It's a part of you exiled for feeling too much, hurting too deeply, being too much for the world you grew in. But it never left. It waited for you to grow strong enough to listen, without judgment. What you call a breakdown might just be your shadow tired of screaming. What you call weakness might be a sign it's time to face what you left behind. Not to control it, but to welcome it, because only what's embraced can finally transform. Not all suffering is visible, not all pain can be explained. Sometimes the body carries what the mind couldn't process. It translates the soul's silence into symptoms, nameless anxiety, unexplainable aches, a fatigue that lingers after full nights of sleep. Psychosomatic pain isn't imagined. It's the body being honest when you can't be, saying what you couldn't say, showing what you couldn't show. It speaks through recurring fevers, shoulder tension, a chest tightness with no physical cause, but very real emotional roots. Repressing feelings doesn't erase them, it relocates them, from the soul to the body. And over time, you adapt. Learn to live with constant discomfort, normalize chronic pain, call it stress, call it life. But deep down, you know, this isn't natural, it's a message. Your body pleading, something inside needs out. And the cruelest part? You blame yourself, feel guilty for a body that hurts, a mind that falters, energy that fluctuates, as if you're broken. But what's really there? An accumulation, an overloaded soul trying to speak through the only language left. Your body isn't punishing you, it's warning you. And hearing that warning could be the first step to stop pretending, to finally exist, fully, even if it means unraveling before rebuilding. Truth doesn't arrive like an avalanche. It approaches softly, and sometimes it hurts less than the effort to hide it, because pretending drains, performing exhausts, until the body begs for mercy and the soul can't bear autopilot anymore. To stop pretending isn't to explode, it's to start where it hurts least, to breathe before answering, to let a feeling exist without naming it, to write what you'd never confess, and upon reading, realize, this was me, begging to be seen. Jung spoke of shadow dialogues, quiet talks with what you've avoided, real listening to what was hidden for fear of rejection. And in this dialogue, something softens, not with understanding, but with allowance, with permission. You needn't broadcast your pain to the world, but you must stop hiding it from yourself, because in that intimate act of truth, the one only you witness, healing begins, not as instant relief, but as reconnection with what still pulses, with the life that survived beneath the masks, with the wholeness you thought you'd lost, but was only waiting for you to look honestly and say, now is safe, now I can bear to see me. You've spent so long seeming okay, you forgot what being okay felt like, played strong when all within begged to collapse, hid behind maturity, levity, control, but the soul never wanted applause, it just wanted space. You don't need to be strong, you need to be whole, and wholeness doesn't come from performance. It comes from the courage to face what still hurts, what still screams, what still pulses unseen, because it's not pain that sickens, it's the pretense, the distance from yourself. Truth doesn't demand exposure, it just asks you to stop self-denial, to quit rehearsing, to breathe, and simply be, without masks, without excuses, without forcing okay, when everything inside begs for pause. The light you seek is born in the place you fear to look. That's where you'll find yourself, in the darkness you avoided, the shadow you rejected, because there, in that raw, aching truth, you can finally meet yourself, and for the first time, recognize who you are.